Hey guys, how's it going? 3.24 leagues are coming up again, and DD's still good, so a lot of people have been asking me which variant of Detonate Dead should I play, right? But there's so many now, due to the Transfigured gem being in the game. So I wanted to make a video where I can kind of side by side showcase the different builds mapping, and also give you guys a little bit of my thoughts about it and which one is my favorite. With that being said, let's get into it. I'm going to first talk about Detonate Dead Ignite Elementalist, the classic. You know, I've played it many leagues now. I made a guide for it the last 2-3 leagues at least. But at least coming from the last league, some things I want to go over is that we lost damage from the Covered in Ash charm removal as well as the Minion Corpse Life removal, but that affects all Detonate Dead. And then also, we lost Bark Skin, which is the bigger issue here. So early physical mitigation on all witch builds, like all top side of the tree builds, a little rough. You know, we're using determination, but even then, it's still a little rough. So you really got to keep that in mind when you're playing this kind of stuff. But now I'll get into the more specific pros and cons between them. So starting off with the pros, the biggest pro of Ignite Detonate Dead Elementalist is that you use the Vol Detonate Dead gem. You don't use a Transfigured gem. So you're not going to be spending hours upon hours in Merc Lab if you're an SSF, or you don't need to buy the gem with, like, who knows how much chaos it's going to cost to buy Detonate Dead of Chain Reaction in Trade League. So you're going to be able to skip that. I think it's a lot easier to get, you know, a Vol gem compared to a Transfigured gem, at least in my experience. So that's the biggest plus for me, honestly. And then on top of that, we're playing a dot-based build. We're playing an Ignite build. So when you are mapping, let's say you're doing an Eater Influence map, for example, and you kill a pack of mobs. Well, you're using the Ignite Proliferation support gem, so say some Eater mobs spawn in late. When you kill a pack, it leaves a lingering Ignite on the ground, so when that new pack runs over it, they're going to have that Ignite on it as well, on them as well, and then they'll die. So I feel like the mapping of Ignite is slightly better than that of the hit-based version. And then also when you're bossing, the playstyle allows for a lot more, you know, dodging mechanics and moving around. So you're able to put an Ignite up, put your Defiled Forces up, and as long as you don't run like a couple screens away, you're still going to be dealing damage. Just because you're a dot-based build. So it's really nice playstyle when bossing, especially. Now we're also an Elementalist. We have Bastion, we're Reflect Immune. It's a lot easier to roll maps in that case. We also have a shit ton of AoE. Yeah, those are just some pluses here. And then when we get into the downsides, so I'd say the biggest difference early on, although we don't have to farm a Transfigured gem, the cast speed and the attack speed on the Elementalist early, kind of rough compared to at least Necromancer, because Necromancer gets a ton of cast speed from their Ascendancy, right? So it feels a little, you do have to use haste early, but it's a little bit clunkier than Necro will feel early maps and mid-tier maps, at least in my experience. And then another big con for me is that in terms of damage, early damage, it's just okay. It's not crazy. I mean, you're able to do T16s extremely early, don't get me wrong, but it's not as good as Chain Reactions damage early. I feel like Ignite really comes online when you're able to get items like, you know, Replica Emberwake. That's like the biggest thing for me. That item is like huge damage for this build. So once you're able to get that, it's when Ignite really starts to feel really good for me. And then the last, you know, con I'll go over is I actually feel like the defenses on Ignite are a bit harder to get later, at least compared to Necromancer, because Necromancer solves a lot of its stuff. Like, you can get elemental resistance on Necromancer from its Ascendancy. You also get block from your Ascendancy, and it opens up a lot of suffixes, so it's a lot easier to fit in uniques like, you know, Defiance of Destiny and Fourth Bound, stuff like that. So I think the, like, middle high-end defense of Necromancer, and just the defense in general early on when you're using Bone Offering, is going to feel a lot better for most players compared to Bastion that you use on Elementalist. Alright, let's move on to Necromancer Detonate Dead of Chain Reaction. So, early on, the damage on the hit-based setup felt a lot better to me, especially because Ignite doesn't really come super online until you get exposure gloves, and then even later super online when you get the unique ring. But the early damage and progressing through tier 1 to tier 16 maps felt a lot better on the hit base variant. And on top of that, it's smoother to play because you have infinite cast speed from Corpse Pact Ascendancy node, and you have chill and shock from that. It's just a crazy Ascendancy point. And you get to use haste, and it actually gives you damage. We're using haste on Ignite Elementalist just for it to feel better, even though Malevolence would be like the damage aura. But haste on Necromancer, DD of Chain Reaction, is actually like damage, and it helps you go faster. We also get an offering. We get Bone Offering for a ton of block, adds a lot of defense, survivability. In maps especially, it's a little worse on bosses, but in mapping defense, when you're getting hit a lot, it's really good. Or you can use Flesh Offering and just go fast. And those plus your curses get automated when you get a trigger weapon. Before you get a trigger weapon, it can be quite a little bit of keybind pressing, but once you get that trigger weapon, it feels pretty good to play. You're really only pressing DD and Desecrate, and then your move skills and stuff. And as far as the late game defensive setup with like Fourth Vow, Defiance of Destiny, and using energized armor and stuff, more accessible for Trade League. This is the main reason why I like Necro. I feel like for the T17 maps and stuff like that, having the defense of Fourth Vow, Defiance of Destiny with a decent amount of armor and Bone Offering is going to be... It's easier to pull off on Necro because you get all res from your Ascendancy. So it opens up your suffix slots a lot to solve like the attributes, the suppression, and all that stuff. So that's like the biggest reason I like the Necromancer. And as far as the cons are concerned, obviously, biggest con, got to get the gem, right? So you're either farming Merc Lab for it yourself. Could take a few hours if you're unlucky. Or you're buying it. Could be 10, 20C early. I don't know. Might even be more than that. And so, it's way harder to get that gem than just getting Evolved at Nate Dead, I will say the energy shield usage late game and even early is kind of hard to solve, especially when you're boss bossing. But early on, you really want the regen ES on belt. But later down the line, you need like the unveiled version of that, and you need ES on multiple pieces to like make it feel actual comfortable enough for you to just hold down right click because you have so much cast speed. But while mapping, at least, the biggest thing I don't like about the mapping compared to Ignite is that you're like spamming two buttons. Like it's very, very, very two button. Especially on bosses, you're like spamming Desecrate, spamming DD to keep like the chaining going. Like it's a lot of buttons. And it also on bosses, it's just a hit-based playstyle, right? So you don't, when you're dodging mechanics and stuff, you're not really doing that much damage. You do get to the point where you're tanky enough where you can tank things to just like hold right click a lot more. But if you have to dodge mechanics, you're doing a lot less damage. So that kind of sucks. But overall, I do think that like the Necromancer is better for what I like to do, which is like the T17's Uber bossing, which is going to be new this league, and we have no idea how hard it's going to be. So being able to go like for some tanky setup with uniques is more attractive to me. So I think Necro this league is what I would go with if I were to pick between the two builds. All right, let's move on to the last build I want to talk about today, and also the one I'm going to be playing is Inquisitor cast on crit, detonate dead of chain reaction. Big title. So without waiting, let's just get straight into the pluses and minuses here. So the biggest plus for a lot of people is gonna be it's one button, and I'm not coping. One button. You have mark on hit that applies your curse. You press Lancing Seal of Spraying, and it casts your Detonate Dead. It casts your Desecrate for you, and you just right click, and then you use your move skills like normal. But actually, one button playstyle, which is not a thing that usually happens for DD. So that's going to be the biggest plus there for a lot of people. And because we're mixing these setups into like one cast on crit 6-link or 5-link, you have open gem sockets for fun things like the new Call to Arms gem with like Enduring Cry or, you know, Infernal Cry even for applying Ash on enemies. So that's kind of nice. And now getting into the like Inquisitor part of it, we have a shit ton of regen. That's things that Witch is not going to really have. Inquisitor that doesn't run RF has a fair amount of regen, so standing on burning ground, you know, like stuff like that is gonna feel a lot better. And also benefit of Inquisitor, we have Ellie Pen when we crit. So fire and ignite resistant rares aren't gonna be nearly as painful as they are on Witch. So that's really nice. And I also think that this version is the highest damage of the 3 builds we talked about today with like reasonable budget. I think if you go crit Necromancer, it potentially could be more damage. I haven't POB'd it, but I think Inquisitor, if you're holding right click, is probably the highest damage on a reasonable budget. But now talking about the cons, there are quite a few of them. So the biggest thing is that it needs a 5-link. You can't play it without a 5-link. I've tried. Doesn't work. You need a 5-link. The main reason is that you put, you know, cast on crit, Lancing Steel, Desecrate, and your DD gem in a 4-link, and then you have no crit chance, so you need the increased crit chance support. That's the 5th link. That's what you need. And not only that, you need to farm a ton of lab. I'm expecting to be in lab 3-4 hours, potentially. You need quality on your Assassin's Mark to generate power charges, for sure. And you need quality in your Lancing Steel, so it has more projectiles. So keep that in mind. If you want to play this, you're going to be in lab for a while. And we're also playing a cast on crit build very early on. So it takes a bit to ramp up. Your crit chance is not that high, especially if you're in SSF. In Trade League, you can have access to things like Carnage Heart, which give you a lot of crit chance from like the attributes and stuff. But in SSF, the crit chance early is going to be pretty rough. And you don't even get to use a Quartz Flask because you need to run a Diamond Flask. So that kind of stinks. And then perhaps the biggest thing for most people is that you really need an MTX if you play this version especially. It destroys your PC. If you don't have a good PC, steer clear. The default Desecrate especially really, really hurts performance when you're spamming and proccing all the time with cast on crit. You definitely also want the MTX for DD if you can get it. It's not as required. Desecrate hurts performance way, way more because it leaves like the desecrated ground everywhere. But yeah, that is, it's kind of like a pay to win kind of thing. pay to have decent performance, I guess. And then also, just like the Necromancer, where this is also hit based, right? So if you're not like standing still, right clicking, you're not really doing damage. So once you get tanky enough to the point where you can tank everything, which you probably will get to that point, especially with the recovery. The recovery is crazy. Once you get tanky enough to get to that point, you can hold right click. But until then, you know, it's hit based. So when you're dodging, you're not doing damage. Also, when I'm talking about doing this standing still and getting tanky stuff, you really want a yoke amulet for the shock to do a lot more damage, especially this league. So you can't use a defensive amulet. You can't use Eternal Damnation. You can't really use Defiance of Destiny. You can, but you're going to be losing some damage. Quite a bit of damage, honestly. So that definitely hurts. It's going to be harder to get to the high defensive level of this build as it is, you know, Elementalist or Necromancer. I'm planning on doing some like 89 max Chaos Res, you know, Incandescent Heart setup, at least right now. But, you know, getting to that point, it's going to be rough. But overall, I'm still going to be playing this setup because it's new to me, and I really like the quality of life things that Inquisitor has, especially when you can really scale it, like having a shit ton of regen, having life on hit from maybe a Watcher's Eye, having access to all the charges. I think like the late game stuff on like day 3 or 4 of the league is going to feel really good for this build. It's just definitely going to be a little bit weaker in the first day, first 2 days compared to, at least in HC, compared to Necro or Elementalist. But in SC, feel free to slap on the like 3 Dragons helmet for shock, and you'll be fine. But yeah, that's about it for Inquisitor. All right, let's kind of conclude the video here, wrap it up. I do want to say that I didn't cover every single variant of Detonate Dead. You know, there's like some Trickster builds, there's like some Poet's Pen stuff. Basically, what I want to say is, regardless of whatever DD version you're playing, you're gonna be fine. They all work. It's mainly just preference, honestly. Like, unless we're talking something super troll like Juggernaut, Detonate Dead or something, I'm sure someone's gonna make that work. But yeah, I think they're all fine. So regardless of what I think, what is my favorite and what I play, you're gonna get away with playing any of them. They're all gonna, most likely all of them are gonna scale up to doing Ubers and T17s. We have to see in the T17s. Who knows? They could be crazy. But we'll have to find out at least start. So as far as like who's playing what build, I'm pretty sure Ben is going to be playing Necromancer, Detonate Dead. If you want to watch him, follow him. I'm going to be playing the Inquisitor version. It's a Rue build. So Rue will probably also play it for more of a SC approach. There's probably going to be a lot of SC streamers if you want to see like higher damage variants. As well as far as Ignite is concerned, I don't know who's playing Ignite definitively, but I played it a bunch of times in the past. A lot of people have played it before. So yeah, feel free to reach out if you have like questions or concerns. Definitely in Twitch. But yeah, if I had to pick my kind of favorite choice, I think that the Necromancer is probably what I would pick, mainly not due for any other reason than the fact that we're kind of diving into the unknown with T17s and the new Atlas and the new League mechanic and stuff like that. Like, we don't know how hard it's going to be, and I really like the defensive approach with like Bone Offering and the T1 uniques of Necromancer. So if I had to pick something, that's kind of going to be what I'd go to. But in terms of like damage, they're all pretty competitive. So yeah, that's pretty much all I've got to say about Detonate Dead. So, have fun picking whichever one you want to play, or not playing Detonate Dead, and then and have a good league start. Thanks for watching, everyone.